We're gonna have to pull over.
You're not pulling over.
Those are police. We can't just keep driving.
Yes, we can.
A lot of people might not remember this, but years ago, Kevin Feige actually talked about the possibility of an Inhumans movie happening in the MCU. That was at a time when Marvel wasn't nearly as big as it is now, so even though the idea was there, it never really turned into a proper film back then. But now, things are very different, because the MCU has expanded massively, and it feels like the only real question left is not if the Inhumans will return, but when they'll finally show up again in a meaningful way. And because of that, it's worth looking at everything we know about the Inhumans and why their story could completely change things moving forward. At one point, there was some confusion about whether the Inhumans were connected to other parts of the MCU, especially during earlier phases. But Kevin Feige made it clear that even though Marvel saw huge potential in them, there wasn't any direct connection being planned at that time. That doesn't mean the idea was dropped completely, though, because Marvel tends to revisit concepts when the timing feels right. And now, with the multiverse saga and the build-up to events like Avengers: Secret Wars, it feels like the perfect moment to bring them back in a bigger way. If the Inhumans do return, they probably won't jump straight into the middle of human conflicts, because that's not really how they operate in the comics. Characters like Black Bolt and his royal family usually stay separate from the rest of the world. They focus on their own society, their own politics, and their own struggles, even though they occasionally interact with other heroes. That separation is actually one of the most interesting things about them, because it makes them feel like a completely different kind of civilization within the Marvel Universe. There's also this ongoing theory that the Inhumans might already exist in the MCU, just hidden away. And one of the most popular ideas is that they could be living on the moon, staying out of sight and avoiding involvement in Earth's problems. That kind of setup would actually mirror what we saw with the Celestials in Eternals, because those beings were influencing events from a distance without people fully understanding what was happening. So if Marvel decides to go in that direction, it would make sense, because it allows the Inhumans to already be part of the universe without needing a full origin story right away. Even though they tend to stay isolated, the Inhumans do have connections to other major groups. For example, Black Bolt is often linked to the Illuminati in the comics, which is a secret group of powerful leaders who make decisions behind the scenes. The MCU has already hinted at this concept, especially in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, where a version of Black Bolt appeared as part of that group. That version didn't last long, though, because Scarlet Witch ended up killing him in a pretty shocking way. But even though that moment was intense, it doesn't mean the character is gone for good, because that was just a variant. Because of that, Marvel could easily introduce a new version of Black Bolt later on, one that actually plays a bigger role in the story. And if they do bring back the Illuminati properly in the main timeline, he could be a key member. That would give the Inhumans a direct connection to the larger MCU, even though they still maintain their own separate identity. Another interesting direction is how the Inhumans could interact with mutants once the X-Men are fully introduced. In the comics, the relationship between mutants and Inhumans isn't always friendly. In fact, they've had major conflicts, even going to war at times. So if Marvel brings both groups into the MCU around the same period, it could build toward a storyline where they clash. That kind of conflict would add a new layer to the universe, because it's not just heroes versus villains, it's two different groups with their own beliefs and priorities. At the same time, the Inhumans also have strong ties to the Fantastic Four. In the comics, there are relationships between members of both groups, including a notable connection between Johnny Storm and Crystal. That storyline brings in elements of romance, betrayal, and emotional conflict, which could translate really well on screen. So if Marvel is planning to expand the Fantastic Four's role in the MCU, the Inhumans could naturally fit into that part of the story as well. Now, looking at the bigger picture, one of the most interesting possibilities is that Marvel could eventually give the Inhumans their own solo project after Avengers: Secret Wars. Once that massive event resets or reshapes parts of the universe, it creates space for new stories and new characters to take center stage. The Inhumans are perfect for that because they bring a completely different tone compared to other Marvel heroes. Their story is more about politics, leadership, and survival as a society rather than just individual heroism. That solo project could explore their royal structure, their internal conflicts, and the responsibilities that come with their power. Characters like Black Bolt, Medusa, and Maximus all have very different perspectives, and that tension could drive the story. Even though they're part of the same family, they don't always agree, and that creates drama that goes beyond simple action scenes. There's also a lot of inspiration from recent comic storylines. In newer events, Black Bolt and the Inhumans have returned to a position of power on a galactic level. They've been involved in major conflicts that affect entire civilizations, and they've even become part of larger alliances. That kind of scale would fit perfectly with where the MCU is heading, especially after dealing with multiversal threats. One of the most important aspects of those stories is how the Inhumans aren't purely heroic. They're often shown as a group that acts in its own interest, even though they sometimes align with other heroes. That makes them more complex, because you can't always predict what they're going to do. And that unpredictability is something the MCU could really benefit from, especially as it tries to introduce new dynamics. At the same time, there's still the question of their past adaptations. The Inhumans had a television series that didn't really succeed, which made people think Marvel might avoid them for a long time. But the MCU has already shown that it's willing to revisit characters and ideas even if they didn't work before. And bringing Black Bolt back, even briefly, was a sign that Marvel hasn't completely forgotten about them. So if they do move forward with the Inhumans, it would likely be a fresh start, not a continuation of what came before. That means new casting, new storytelling, and a new approach that fits better with the current direction of the MCU. The franchise has grown so much, so there's more room now to explore something like this properly. In the end, the Inhumans represent a part of Marvel that hasn't been fully explored on screen yet. They're not just another team, they're a royal bloodline with their own culture, their own rules, and their own way of interacting with the world. And if Marvel introduces them at the right time, especially after something as big as Secret Wars, they could add a whole new dimension to the universe. From royal, high-level DCU and MCU breakdowns to the quieter rumors that don't always make headlines but often turn out to be true, we cover it all. Keep your eyes right here, because if you truly love cinema, this is the channel you need to be watching.